Right, okay. Been asked to sort of explain how I come up with tweaks for different wind angles and strengths and whatever. It's reasonably easy to dial in a hole-in-one to sort of get a hole-in-one in practice, possibly live, but it becomes more difficult to get consistent hole-in-ones. So in terms of curl tweaks, a long time ago, sort of 2 years ago when I started doing the master guides, I introduced curl tweaks. So there were a few different methods out there, a couple of different methods, but the main one was probably over-adjusting or under-adjusting or offsetting left and right. I decided to curl because I do believe that that's the most consistent way of counteracting different wind conditions, slight variances in the wind conditions. So if the wind arrow is pointing sort of like that, like it is now, and then the next time you play it, the wind arrow's sort of pointing that way, obviously, as you sort of hit your ball off the tee, let's say your tee's there and you hit into there, if you get the wind that we've got in the picture, the ball flight's going to go like that. If you get the wind that's like more crosswind, the second little arrow that I drew, your ball is going to go like this. So instead of pointing up there, you're going to get a little bit more curl and it's going to sort of go over that way a bit. So after landing, it's going to you're sort of looking at the secondary. So because we're using right spin, it's going to go there. But if you get the more crosswind, it's going to be heading that way, so it's going to miss left. So this is one way of looking at it. It doesn't always work this way, but general rule, and the easiest one, and the first one I always try, is sort of curling right to counteract that. So if it's gonna curl left because of crosswind, I'll generally add a couple of right curl so that it just sort of straightens it up like that. So rather than being like that, it's going to straighten the flight up, and then that secondary is going to be nice and straight where I want it. If you get a tailwind angle like that, it's not going to give it the push because it's not going to be a straight flight. It's going to set off straight like that, and then it's going to sort of curl to there, and that amount of curl depends on the amount of crosswind or tailwind, so it's sort of like that, the flight, and you can see how that's going to affect the second bounce. So sorry, the sort of secondary movement, I mean. So if your flight is big crosswind, generally this is going to be over there. If you get the sort of middle wind, it's going to go there, and if you get the tailwind, it's probably going to miss right. So that's basic, that's very, very basic in terms of wind angle tweaks. But what you then need to think about is, well, if I get the tailwind, what's going to happen is, I'll just play this video a little bit. So I'm setting the spins, finding the position. If I get the tailwind, what's going to happen here? What you've got to think about is where you're pulling to. So let's just make them red, blue and yellow, because those are the colours that I generally go with. So if I've got a tailwind, sorry, a crosswind, the leftmost wind, I'm going to pull over here. If I get the middle wind, I'm going to pull here, slightly exaggerated arrows here, but just so that you can see. If I get the tailwind, so the yellow arrow, I'll be pulling to there. Now, depending on where you pull to, you could have a totally different level there. So this point here could be lower than this point here. And if it is, you're going to get a much flatter or a little bit flatter ball flight. So you may need OP or curl a different way, you know. And if you get the sort of yellow angle, it might be flying quite a bit further because you're adjusting up to a higher ground or something like that, you know. So this particular shot, what we are doing is we are applying circle break. So the shot was to apply circle break under power. Now what that means, this becomes a little bit more complicated again. What that means is that really when we adjust, we really are starting, hang on 1 second, we're starting too far up there because we've got to, I'll just make that a bit clearer. So where we're starting there, if by the time we get to there, we've got to apply circle break under power, that generally means that if we didn't apply the under power, we'd be landing there right at the, you know, right at the end. So the true landing position is going to be this, what colour? Like this red circle here. It's like the true landing position, and we're underpowering to hit that landing position. Now, this, where we're adjusting to, that has a bearing on how much underpower we need to apply. So with this shot, the first sort of tweaks that I showed you with the left and right curl for, you know, different ball flights, on this particular hole, the ball flight doesn't seem to be affected. So we didn't apply any curl tweaks on this because it just didn't seem to push over in the wind, and I don't know why that is. It's something to do with the terrain, as to why, you know, you can't. I'm just trying to think how to explain it. Something to do with the terrain as to why the ball doesn't push over in the air. So it does stay pretty straight. So for that reason, we're only changing the underpower tweaks so that we just tweak this landing position. So on this particular hole, you know, this is the red angle, so we're just going to go circle break underpower. And there we go, and got the drop on that one. And on this angle, it's the sort of between the blue and red, so we're going to just apply a little bit more underpower. So there's the underpower, and there's the one more underpower, and we're looking for the same landing position. So the first time I play this, or once I'm starting to drop it and get very close, you know, regularly, what I'll do is I'll go back and watch the replay. I'll watch there, where the ball lands. I'll watch the line onto the green, so I'm thinking, right, well, this is just before the end of the fringe. It's second bounce and third bounce, middle of the dark square. And I know that's going to drop left side. So after that, I'll get another drop, I'll tweak it. If it misses, I'll go back and I'll watch the bounce. Second bounce just before the end of the fringe, and third bounce middle of the dark square. You can see that that bounced a little bit further right than the other one. So I'm gaining information each time. I'll look at these, the bounces, and again this is blue and red, between blue and red. So what I ended up doing on the weekend round is when I pushed up, because I was dropping left edge, I was just favouring just ever so slightly the right of the flag. I didn't miss it once in the weekend round, because I was just looking at, I'm dropping it here, aiming centre cut, but I was just sort of aiming 1 pixel to the right of the flag. Again, looking at first bounce, second bounce, end of the fringe, third bounce, middle of the dark square. So if, before we found the underpower tweaks, what would be happening was, would be bouncing, second bounce, middle of the fringe maybe, and then the third bounce. So it's going to be something like there, and then there, and then coming into the right of the hole, whereas this ball is coming in there. So I know in that instance that I need more overpower to get this second bounce, to bring this up. So what you've got to look at is the sort of secondary flight of the ball after the first bounce, where it's going, where it's headed onto the green. And it's laborious, to be honest. It can take a long time. It's very draining to take a shot, go back, watch the replay, take another shot, go back, watch the replay, and you sometimes you think you've cracked it, and then you get a different wind angle. You apply the opposite tweak to what you think, and it just doesn't work. And there might be a glitch roll somewhere, or if you're adjusting sort of down a hill one way, you think, well, I'm going to be adjusting up a hill the other way. It doesn't always work like that. So you've just got to sort of brute force it sometimes. You can have a really good guess, and I'm generally pretty good at guessing, posting the tweaks and then playing it over and over, and the tweaks work. And when I post in the telegrams, I've not necessarily dropped all angles and all wind strengths, but it's a lot of the time it's based on common sense, on what I believe is going to work, and then I will brute force it once I've posted it. I'll brute force it, play it 10 or 12 times and test and tweak it if necessary. So that's the sort of basics. Again, with underpower shots as well, if you're playing regular shots where you're centering the ball, that means that you've got a true adjust. So if you're adjusting 1-1 and then centering the ball, brilliant, and it's landing where you want to, then that's ideal, really. But I do like these overpower and underpower shots because it's a coded thing in the game that you can actually see, whereas centering the ball is very much individual. I think I've centered it, but it's difficult to tell, with different shaped balls and different size balls and people's different devices. But the circle break and circle drop and whatever, it's something that's coded in the game, so it can't vary, really. So I believe it's a very accurate way of taking a shot. But when you are applying circle break, it means that you've either set up in the wrong position or you've over or under adjusted. So there are occasions where if you're under adjusting or over adjusting and then having to apply underpower, then your wind angle tweaks will be sort of back to front because you are sort of pulling too far. So if I've got this crosswind, say like a red angle, I'm going to be over adjusting and then having to apply underpower. because I've adjusted too far to land in the right position. Well, that means because I've over adjusted, I've got crosswind. So you would think that I would need to curl the opposite way, but because I've over adjusted, I've over adjusted too much this way, I will then need to curl left to bring it back in line with the pin. And that's quite a difficult one to get your head round. But if I'm, let's say, adjusting the yellow angle, which might be here, that means I'm over adjusting to apply the underpower, but that means I'm sort of going to be adjusting not far enough. It's quite it's difficult to put into words, and I hope I'm not just rambling. I hope it does make sense. But you know, if you pull it not enough in the yellow angle, because it's a false adjust, is what I'm trying to say. I will then need to curl right where you would think you might need to curl left, and it's just like the curls are the wrong way around, because you're giving a false adjust and then overpowering or underpowering, so it can sometimes sort of flip your curl tweaks. So there's quite a lot going on there. I'll post this for now, but I'll have a think about how I can explain it a little bit better. But I know I've had a couple of people ask me, so I said I would post something, so here it is. And I'll leave you with a nice hole-in-one that got me the gold this week. Hope it makes sense. Drop me a message if you need any clarification. I'll always try my best to answer. All right, cheers everyone.